I now call order the regular session meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs on Tuesday, October 7th, 2014 at 6:30. Roll call.
Mayor Archie?
Here.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Here.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Here.
Commissioner Banther?
Here.
Commissioner Sieber,
Here.
Tonight's invocation will be given by Reverend Melody Kidd, Signature Healthcare. Everyone, please stand, remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance following.
Tonight, O God, we thank you for all the blessings of life that you grant to us each and every day. We thank you for the refreshment of rain and the joy of sunshine, and that you have granted that to us here this day. O God, we remember our leaders of our nation, our world, even right here in Tarpon Springs. We ask that discernment and wisdom be granted in the decisions made. Today, O God, we remember the military personnel throughout the world. May your protection be brought to them and providential care be granted. Today, O God, we thank you for hearing our prayer. Grace and peace to all. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now go to public comments on any item that will not be discussed this evening. Seeing none, first thing I'd like to announce is item number 15, ordinance 2014-13, repealing the section 27 of the city charter, which will be the first reading, has been deferred to Tuesday, October 21st, 2014. And with that, we go to proclamations. First one is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Excuse me. This proclamation reads, whereas while considerable progress is made in the fight against breast cancer, remains the most significant, most frequently diagnosed type of non-skin cancer and the second leading cause of cancer death among women in our country. And whereas during National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we reaffirm our commitment to supporting breast cancer research and to educating all Americans about its risk factors, detection, and treatment. As we display pink ribbons on our lapels, offices, storefronts, we also support those courageously fighting breast cancer and honor the lives lost to this devastating disease. And whereas screening and early detection are also essential components in the fight against cancer, for women ages 40 and over, regular mammograms and clinical breast exams for healthcare providers, every 1 to 2 years are the most effective way to find breast cancer early. And whereas during National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we stand with our mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends, and we recognize all who have joined their loved ones in fighting their battle, as well as the advocates, researchers, and healthcare providers whose care and hard work give hope to those living with breast cancer. By educating ourselves and supporting innovative research, and we will improve the quality of life for all Americans affected by breast cancer, and one day defeat this terrible disease. Now, therefore, I, David O. Archie, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Tarpon Springs, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2014 as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I'm not sure if anyone's going to, now this one's to be mail. Also, item number 2 is proclamation for Fire Prevention Month. And this proclamation reads, whereas the city of Tarpon Springs is committed to ensuring the safety of all those living and visiting our city, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the location where people are at greatest risk from fire, whereas home fires killed more than 2,500 people in the United States in 2011, according to National Fire Protection Agency, and the fire departments in the United States responded to 370,000 home fires. And whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, where fire departments responded to more than 156,000 annually between 2007 and 2011, and whereas 2 of every 5 home fires started in the kitchen unattended equipment was a factor in 1/3 of the reported cooking fires. 57% of the reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occurred when the victims tried to fight the fire themselves. And whereas children under 5 face a high risk of non-fire burns associated with cooking than being burned in a cooking fire. And whereas the city of Tarpon Springs residents should stay in the kitchen when frying food on the stovetop, keep a 3-foot kid free zone around cooking areas, and keep anything that can catch fire away from stovetops. And whereas residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire, and working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported fires in half, and whereas Tarpon Springs first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires through prevention and protection education, whereas the 2014 Fire Prevention Month theme, Smoke Alarm Saves Lives, test yours every month, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert, ensure you have smoke alarms in your home, and check your smoke alarms monthly. Now, therefore, I, David O. Archie, by virtue of authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Tarpon Springs, Florida, do hereby proclaim October 2014 as Fire Prevention Month. Chief Butcher. Yes, sir. Thank you. You have something to say.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. This year, the emphasis is really on concentrating on preventing the fires and injuries at your own home, in your kitchen. So there really is we want to make everyone more aware this year, especially to be more aware while you're in your kitchen. There's in schools now, they're really trying to teach kids home economics and cooking and things like that in home. But they really need to keep the emphasis on the grease fires and whatnot that you have in the kitchen. Also, I encourage everyone in this room, when you get home tonight, check your smoke detector. Reach up, hit that little button, make sure it makes some noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comments on this item? The next, we have a presentation is item number 3, and that's Eagle Scouts candidates and certificate of appreciation. And we have Mr. Kenneth Elp, and he helped build and install 7 park benches at Sunset Beach. And Mr. David Duffy, he constructed 7 benches for Craig Park and installed them. And both of these Eagle Scouts are from Troop 48. And first is always, to me, a tremendous achievement for anyone to reach the rank of being an Eagle Scout. It takes, to me, a lot of fortitude and courage in terms of perseverance to make it to that point. And not that many people that have been Scouts can say that they have achieved the rank of Eagle Scout, but also having done a project that's going to benefit the citizens and residents and visitors of the city of Tarpon Springs is, to me, added plus. What we have today, I see there's a couple of letters from Commissioner Banther, and there's a couple of certificates that we would like to give to both of these young men on behalf of the city of Tarpon Springs. First, saying that we appreciate you and your efforts, and to me, these are the epitome of what we have for as youth. Sometimes we hear about the young people that's always doing wrong. More publicity is given to those young people than the ones that's doing right. So we just want to say we thank you for your efforts, for what you've done, for as contributing to the quality of life, for as the city of Tarpon is concerned, and I know that the future shines bright for you. We have a couple of certificates, and this reads, Certificate of Appreciation to the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs. Present this one to Kenneth Elp, and the other one is to David Duffy, and it says, in recognition of your outstanding service to the community, this award is given in heartfelt gratitude is expressed in witness whereof this certificate is presented by the direction of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, this 7th day of October, 2014. And Mr. Elp and Mr. Duffy. Congratulations, sir. I don't know if you gentlemen would like to say anything. Say you'd rather work than talk. We appreciate all that you do. Again, we definitely thank you. I don't know if any of the commissioners have anything to say, but any public comments on this item? But I say just keep up the good work, and like I say, I know that you'll be doing great things in the future, and we definitely appreciate it.
Hi there, can you hear me? Lisa Benita, 733 North Florida Avenue. I would like to thank the board for recognizing these 2 worthy young men from Tarpon's Troop 48 for their achievement of earning the Eagle Scout rank, which is an accomplishment that will follow them throughout their lives, although they probably don't realize it yet. The main component in earning the Eagle Scout rank is leadership. They had to plan and organize their projects in great detail, supervise it, record it, and then stand before the Eagle Board of Review. Honestly, no easy feat. So as their journey in life begins, David hopes to attend Annapolis and serve in the Navy. Kenny's already enlisted in the Army and will serve as soon as he graduates high school. So aside from being Boy Scouts, David plays on the East Lake High football team, and Kenny works part-time for George Bolaris, who's been teaching him how to sponge dive, and by the way, he loves it. Tarpon Springs has 4 Boy Scout troops and 4 Cub Scout packs, and I hope our community finds it in their hearts to support them and to remember them for community service projects that are needed. Troop 48, which is sponsored by First United Methodist Church, has a 65-year history of producing more Eagle Scouts than any other troop in the district, Commissioner Banther is a great example. No one is a better asset to the community than a Boy Scout. They're taught personal responsibility, leadership, and good citizenship, and will never become a burden to the taxpayer. Again, I thank the board for recognizing Troop 48's latest Eagle Scouts, David Duffy and Kenny Epp. They're an example of fine young men, and they give us all hope for the future, and we need it right now. I'm so proud of them. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Thank you again for both of your efforts. With that, we will go to presentation, internal audit, procurement services division.
Good evening. John Weber with partner with Crow Horwath. If these fine young men decide to go into accounting, I'd be happy to talk to them. We're always looking for good people, that's for sure. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit tonight about recent internal audit we completed related to procurement services. And the objectives of our audit were really to determine the adequacy and operating effectiveness of the internal controls in place related to the procurement of services, as well as look for efficiencies and then to, on a sample basis, verify compliance with the policies and procedures you have in place. Related to the purchasing process, you have a number of requirements in place on how you purchase items really related to the dollar amount and dollar thresholds on whether you just obtain a best quote, you obtain 3 bids, or potentially go out to actual request for proposal for a particular service. So we looked at that as well in our scope of what we were doing. So the a little bit more detail on what we looked at, concentrating on the purchase order process as well as approval process, approval limits on those purchasing guidelines that you have in place, and competitive bidding process, as well as overall having the proper documentation in place and on file to support all of your purchasing activities. So we also looked at the change order process and how that takes place, and reviews and approvals for that. And we tested a number of items to determine that applicable policies and procedures were followed. So we did have 2 areas in completing this work where we have a couple of recommendations. The first area has to do with utilizing the computer system. And you have what's called OnBase, which is a procurement system that works with your SunGuard financial system. And it wasn't many. It was 2 of the 40 items we looked at. We found it difficult to really trace and find all the documentation for some purchase order changes, renewals, scope changes, things like that. And the reason being, it was mainly being done through a manual type process. So when we brought that to the attention of management, they did look at the OnBase system, and there is the functionality in the system to be able to track any of these changes and change order processes that happen here at the city. So my understanding is that they've now begun doing so and utilizing the system to its fullest extent. The second recommendation has to do with the Recreation Division. They have contracts with a number of independent contractors for services. Could be things like fitness instruction or crafts instruction, things like that. So in many of these cases, these are for lower dollar amounts, but in some cases, they exceed the dollar amount where you should at least obtain, or they should obtain 3, competitive quotes. Not an actual RFP process for these services, but obtain the 3 quotes based on your policies you have in place. And that wasn't being completed. So we, again, that's been brought to the attention of management, and my understanding is they're putting procedures in place now to ensure that the Recreation Division, and like all other city departments, go through purchasing to make sure the proper procedures are being followed. So in our testing of you know, signing off on documents, using purchase orders, things of that nature. The documentation was all there that we sampled, and, you know, in general, the controls that you have put in place are working effectively over the purchasing process. So we just had those two recommendations related to this audit. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Are there any questions? We thank you for that reported, and I'm glad that those two deficiencies are being corrected.
All right, thank you very much.
Any public comments on this item? Let's see. Do we have to? I don't think we need to do anything for us at this informational. So, next we have our consent agenda. Is minutes, September 16th, regular session, and September 24th, special session. Satisfaction and release of liens, attorney fees, Thompson, Sizemore, Gonzalez, Hearing LLP, invoice number 77057 and 77157. Special events, Haunted Forest Trail Recreation Division, that's October 11th, 17th, 24th, 25th of 2014, and the Zombie Run Recreation Division, October 18th, 2014. Oktoberfest, Tarpon Springs Merchants Association, October 17th through the 19th. St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Cathedral Food and Wine Festival, that's October the 24th through the 26th. Antique and Treasure Sales, Chamber of Commerce, November 22nd. Then the reject sold bid submitted for bid number 140099-B-RS, furnace 13125 KVA slash 2500 kW diesel generator with enclosure, and 10 is authorized execution of the Fire Protection Service Agreement. Is there any items anyone would like to pull? More information? Chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval. Second.
Any public comments on any of these items? Hearing none, roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. Next item is special consent agenda, item number 11, purchase of property for stormwater improvements, Earl Street. City Manager? Oh, Mrs. Robertson.
Thank you. Bob Robertson, Public Services Program Manager. This agenda item seeks board approval to proceed with the purchase of a parcel of land on Earl Street to be used for stormwater improvements. This past January, this board approved an interlocal agreement with Pinellas County by which the county would reimburse the city for costs associated with fixing the stormwater flooding issue at the end of Earl Street. The purchase price of $12,000 is 100% reimbursable under the terms of that interlocal agreement with the county. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Robertson? Chair will entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any public comments on any of these items? Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Larson, Mayor Archie?
Yes. Item number 12, renew file number 122-N-JJ, maintenance of public restrooms at Sponge Exchange.
This item is brought forward of the Sponge Exchange restrooms that we have had some conversation during the budget time and talked about. If you remember, we changed this agreement and lowered it a while ago to the 7,500. We also, when we did so, included the Night of the 10 that's scheduled now, Night of the Islands event, to be in here, along with the other events that the predominance of where these events are in the middle of the docks. Obviously, this has become an issue, and you had a recommendation from the Budget Advisory Committee to not continue this. We are bringing this forward, recommending approval. We have had a contentious time down at the docks with the projects and on other things. This, I know, is a separate issue, but when we had talked about lowering it, the consideration, again, was talked about the Night of the Islands events, and I had to make sure, from my memory, that those were included within there. Not only the included of use of the restrooms for the Night of the Islands, but the ability, as we have no electric, of the Sponge Exchange to provide that. Now, the electric isn't in there, but that's in the cooperation with us and the Sponge Exchange to do. So there was some thought about lowering and then money for the events going in, but with 10 of the Night of the Island events, again, 6 to 8 other events where the predominance of the events are in the center of the docks around where that is. You'd probably, if you lowered and put a price on the events, you'd probably be close to that $7,500 figure anyway. So the item was placed in the budget by me. Obviously, by terms of the contract, though, we do have to bring up the contract in October. At this time, I recommend we keep and approve this, and it's brought forward to you for the decision.
Any, Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I appreciate this being placed on the agenda, and I appreciate the city manager's comments. I'd also like to express my appreciation to the Budget Advisory Board for examining this issue and their recommendation. I know they recommended eliminating this budget item altogether, which I think is worth considering. I think this board made the correct step a number of years ago when we lowered this item to $7,500. It was higher than that prior to that point in time. I also think this board made a step in the right direction at the downtown area when we eliminated the funding of a private bathroom down there. We did that at that point in time because there was a public bathroom built. Along the same lines, we did build a public bathroom in the sponge dock area. I think it's appropriate that we start to move in the direction of eliminating the funding of a private bathroom in the sponge dock area. Currently, it's at $7,500. I think one option would be to go down to zero. Another option would be to phase it down to $3,500 at this point. And letting the property owner know that we want to move in the direction of phasing down to zero. Perhaps going, like I said, from $7,500 down to $3,500 at this point would be an appropriate step. And I'd like to make a motion at this point that we do that at this point we make the motion to lower the funding from $7,500 to $3,500.
Not here in the second, that for lack of a second, Commissioner Tarpon.
Thank you. I believe when we discussed this either last year or the year before last, I went into quite a bit of detail about the history of the agreement, and I don't feel like it is necessary at this point to do that because I think we're all aware of it because we just discussed it last year. That said, in current terms, I will say that I'd like to clear the air slightly on some of the things that have been said. The contribution from the city, in my opinion, to the Sponge Exchange and the bathrooms there, by no means are special interest. By no means is it corporate welfare. It's also the recommendation that was made by the Budget Advisory Committee that we'd like to eliminate the funding for the bathrooms, but we'd like it for the Night in the Islands. Well, we're talking about $7,500. You can't have your cake and eat it too. The funding used to be $15,000 prior to the bathrooms and on the sponge docks. The Sponge Exchange fronted the whole bill and had a good faith agreement with the city for about 30 years. That said, in comparing the Sponge Exchange bathrooms to the bathrooms that were downtown, there's a pretty good difference in my opinion. When I see a couple hundred people walking around downtown, I get pretty excited since I have a business there. I know for a fact, being born and raised here, that you'll see a couple thousand people walking around in the sponge docks. So for me, you're not comparing apples to apples to say, we took the funding from the downtown because we built bathrooms. Now we're going to take the funding from the sponge exchange because we built bathrooms. To kind of quote something that you said, Mayor, I think you said at the budget meeting when we slightly discussed this, is that we were under the impression that we were going to have bathrooms at the city marina now, which is at the beginning of the sponge docks, also in the middle at the sponge exchange, and now we have the new bathrooms in the end. So I'm of the belief and of the opinion that there's a need for the bathrooms, not only for the night in the islands, but as a whole in the sponge docks. So I'm in favor of keeping the funding, and at this point I'll move to approve the renew file number 120122-N-JJ for funding. Thank you.
Second, and I have commentary too.
Go to Commissioner.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Yeah, there is a need for the bathrooms, especially during season, and I know that there's an expense that goes along with that. What I would like to see, I was down there today, would be some signage at the front of the sponge exchange, because those bathrooms are all the way in the back of the sponge exchange, so it's kind of confusing as to where there might be bathrooms in there. So I would just suggest that maybe some type of signage be included in the front of the sponge exchange saying public bathrooms if we are going to be helping with the funding of these bathrooms.
Yes, and we were talking, when we were down there, talking about the issues of landscaping and the other things, that's something we were looking at, some of that signage to all three of them, to make sure all three of the directions to the restrooms, and we'll work on that to let the public know, and as we're doing those projects and stuff, to get that set, and I'm sure Mr. Pappas agreed to that, and that's no problem, and we've got places to put them in both places, so.
I also recommend that we approve it.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes, I think as well we need restrooms at each point in the docks. Having, living right there, we walk down there when it's nice out. You have the public restrooms now, which are great, and we did do a reduction in the rent of these bathrooms when those came on board. And then we have the ones at the marina in the beginning, and I think we need to keep these in the middle, because you can't ask people to not have a public restroom and have to walk to either end. Now, granted, shops have it in their interest to let people use it, but that's not always the case. And I think it's much more efficient to have kind of a blanket agreement for the whole year to use bathrooms than having to negotiate for each night on the islands. It just makes more sense to me. So I'm in favor of keeping this, but we do need signage. If that's not there, so people know that they can use it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to roll call or any type of public comments, I just say that I appreciate the Budget Advisory Committee in their statement. Also, some of the things that Vice Mayor Lawson said, and one of the things is that because this is a one-year agreement, every year it can be reassessed as to the value of continuing in this relationship. I would suggest that, maybe a month prior to this coming before whatever commission, that there are some discussions with Mr. Pappas about, whether at that point in time, staff or management feels that, this can be reduced or some other things. And as we continue to look at opportunities for bathrooms in that area, and I think that what was talked about for is Commissioner Sieber and Commissioner Banth, I think is very important that we have the proper signage, that people don't have to find those bathrooms. If you know where they're at, it's a great thing, but if you don't know where they're at, then it will probably be a little difficult to locate them in the back. But I think at the present time, I can continue to support us leaving it here, but I think one of the mechanisms that's put in place now is that this can be looked at every year as to the viability of continuing this relationship. So With that, any public comments on this item?
Peter Delacus, 514 Ashland Avenue. I understand the logic presented on both sides as far as new facilities have been provided for the city, and previously when we've done that, we've stopped outside funding for that. Yet the logic is also there that this particular bathroom is in the central part of the area. It does service for certain events. And the mayor did say that this comes before you each year to evaluate and look at the value. But how do you judge the value? And that's the thing that I find missing. For years, we've talked about the accountability. I think that's the big issue. People may have heartburn. You're giving $7,500 to take care of the bathroom, yet we hear complaints that the bathrooms aren't maintained, they're dirty, they're closed. So for me, if I was there again, I would say, hey, do we have people who go down in the sponge docks to water the plants or do all the city stuff, do random checks, get a checklist, 5 a month or so, or have somebody at the Night of the Islands confirm the bathrooms are fully open all the times, get reports back, then assess them, put a comment box, have the public respond to you. And then when you come back next year, you'll have some information to know whether this is of value, or you can go to the other lessor and say, hey, look, this is the data we got. This is what you're going to provide. This is all we're going to give you. Either that, if you continue to pay that amount, then there's a requirement of a better graded quality of service. But there is no accountability to you from them, which you all know we have to be accountable for the dollars we take. So that's the missing link, and that's what I would say. It makes sense to go ahead in some way, continue to give them money to solve this interim problem, but somehow you need to find a way to get data back to evaluate the true value. And then you can figure out, and we've got people in public service, they know what it costs to maintain our current restrooms over a year. They could value it out as the cost per day, and you figure out how many events and days that the city quote unquote sponsors, and you can come up with a plan to say, all right, here's what it actually would cost for those days. We'll give you a 10% premium or something. You can work things out. But unless you have data to do something, to figure out, where you stand, then you're just tossing money and hope they keep the restrooms open and clean. Thank you.
No other public comments. Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber, Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
No.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. Next item we have is authorization of execution of Jolly Trolley Service Agreement, North Coastal Route.
Basically, we have pretty much the same agreement we have. Obviously, the numbers have changed a little bit because the grant is up. We knew that 3 years, we knew that time was coming. So this was expected to move from the somewhere around $18,000 area to the $32,000 area. Everything else is intact and pretty much the same way for the cities that are involved, city and county, because the county pays a portion for Palm Harbor and the county areas that stop. So it's basically the same agreement with the price we knew was coming last year, and it is budgeted for, and it is used, as especially the people in the docks can attest to. So I recommend approval of this tonight.
The only question I'll go to you, Commissioner, about this, that I know there's a provision as far as with green light, if it passes, would it affect this contract, or would it probably be future contracts as it relates to them absorbing the cost for?
No, it'd be future contract. We don't think the money for green light, if it passes, kicks into the 2015-16 cycle, which is when that would affect us. So that money, if it passes, even if it passes in November, would not kick in until the next year.
So if
So it would
it
not
passes,
affect,
then
it would not affect,
we won't have to-
it has zero effect on it, whether it passes or fails, it has no effect on this contract.
But it will affect, if it passes future budgets.
If it passes future budgets, there will be no cost for the services of the trolley.
Mr. Bowden?
Mark, could you just explain to me again how we went up in price from the grant that fell through or something, or what happened there?
Well, the reason we had a reduced price is we got a 3-year grant that paid a portion of it. When you divided it between the cities, it ended up the smaller amount. We knew when that 3 years up, if there was no other grant or anything, that our number would go to this 32,000. So we knew we'd have the 3 years at, I believe, $18,000. When the grant came up, all the contributors, the main contributors, that it would go to the 32.
Is there a possibility of getting that grant again, if we, who would apply for it? or-
There was none available for the cycle coming up, but obviously, regardless of if green light didn't pass, obviously if those transportation grants come up, the cities of Dunedin, myself, and them would go after those to bring that cost down again, so.
Because I only see this, I assume their cost, though, if we don't have that increase in sales tax, then we would have to keep funding this. And if it keeps going up, we're talking about, bathrooms here, but we're paying $30,000. Now, it's a very good service, but you have to ask eventually, when is that going to stop? And I would also, I'm sure we get them, I just haven't read them, but also reports, visually, I see them being used. I'm in support of the trolley, don't get me wrong, but we're paying $30,000 along with other cities. I think we should have some more information on how it's being used and make sure there's not something else out there that might not cost so much money for us to have to subsidize.
Any additional comments? Any public comments on this item? Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. Item number 14 is special event application, Tarpon Springs International Market. That's October 25th, 2014 through June 27th, 2015.
And I will be doing this event for Karen Lemons, who's on the way to represent us in Miami for some of her economic development stuff. She's been lacking doing planning stuff. It's a big conference down there that she has left for, so I'll take this item that she has been working for. As you see, this is bringing back a type of market. It's a different type of market, as you see from the back of an international market, but it does have the components of a farmer's market within it. Those elements of a farmer's market is very important to us, because as myself and the mayor met with the community health people and stuff, and just recently, that was one of the areas where you get points for as a city if you're applying for grants. And as we're doing the mayor's challenge and as we're looking for grants, otherwise, remember, we got a grant to pay for the equipment at the fitness park. That is one element. In fact, it's an element that the community health is focusing on. So not only will this market, be there for that, but it has that component to help us, when we're looking for different type of grants for fitness, health, and that sort of thing. One of the main differences of this market is it is a Saturday market, but the market is going to be confined to the parking lot only, not Court Street. Another element that we asked to put into this market, especially with it being on Saturday, was that the ability of the businesses in the area to be able to go under, if you remember the second Saturday rules, and as the time of the market goes, they will be able to do sidewalk displays as long as they keep all ADA requirements, of course, so that it's not only a market where people would go to in the parking lot that the Merchants Association has put on, but it would be a whole downtown event and enable some of the businesses downtown, again, to put some attractive displays out and have people not only contain their activities to the parking lot, but walk up and down Tarpon Avenue and increase our business down there. Again, this market is pretty much to go on the same time as the last one, October through June. I think the last one ended towards the end of May. This one is through June. There are events that may conflict, and at that time, those events come up, they will come to the commission for addendum for another place. They have asked in this one, since one of the times that is coming up is on November 29th, that they be allowed to use the Craig Park for that market on that day. The other days, as they come up and if they look for another location, that will come back for you for approval. If there's an alternate location, because there's an event downtown that prohibits them being there. We've got representatives from the merchants and an individual who's doing the market for the merchants. They're in the audience if you have any questions of them and or any further questions of me about this event.
Commissioner Bell?
So can they still, I mean, just give me, so they can still do like a farmer's market? It's just under this, it's just this branding of it being more just like international, like you can still go get fresh produce and
Yes.
what, so it can encompass what was sold there last time, it's just their intent for it to be more international?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
The cultural flavor of international.
That's a nice thing to like.
do.
I see that you have a pretty aggressive schedule here, starting on the 25th. And I know that there are a lot of Saturday markets, and I really do feel that we have a need for a market here in Tarpon Springs. How do you feel you will be able to get vendors competing with other Saturday morning markets and make it, a little better than the last market was with the vendors that were there?
Could you go ahead and introduce yourself and get an answer?
Tim Stevens, 357 Wood Dove Avenue. I'm president of Anclo Concierge. I'm managing this event on behalf of the Tarpon Springs Merchants Association. To answer your question, what we're looking at doing is something different, because if we don't, it's just not going to work out. With Whole Foods opening and markets cropping up in many different areas, we need to have more of something that truly represents Tarpon Springs, something unique and different. Tarpon Springs is known as an international community, and taking inspiration from the types of markets that you would see in Greece, but expanding that into multiple continents and multiple ethnicities, more representative of all of Tarpon Springs, and pulling together a truly international market by going more to grassroots merchants rather than the usual gypsy type vendors. No disrespect intended, but we want something more than what you're seeing at a lot of these events. And to accomplish that, we're seeking them out and putting together a special turnkey program for them, making it very easy and affordable and profitable for them to come to Tarpon Springs and present something new, unique, different, and have a market that is distinctly Tarpon Springs.
How's that going?
It has been pending approval, so we've kind of been putting the word out. We've seen a lot of interest, and actually have applications on file already waiting to finalize. Just want to make sure that, recently there was an event in Tampa where someone marketed a event at the fairgrounds that turned out to be bogus. A lot of vendors got burned. So rather than doing anything prior to approval, we were waiting on approval from the Board of Commissioners before we proceeded in accepting any money from any vendor.
Thank you. I'll just say that initially I was skeptical of the Saturday sale, just because I believe it could potentially be problematic. I do see, though, some of the items that were identified in a memo from Mr. LaCour, or from Ms. Lemons. One, identifying dates of conflict, which I think is forward-thinking. Additionally, I think your original proposal, you were wanting to close a portion of Court Street. I see that's no longer in the mix, which I think would have been problematic. The sidewalk sales, I think, is a nice touch. There are still some areas that I think could potentially be a little problematic. I think notification is something that we're really going to have to work on with the police department in terms of vehicles being parked in the parking lot Friday night.
Yes.
definitely want to make sure that we know and identify that strip of land that's privately owned, that's adjacent to the parking lot, Chief, behind Zip and Ship and whatnot. And I think that within your proposal, you're going to try and target, or at least I think it was actually the memo from the Merchant Association, which speaks to the benefit to some of the local vendors and the opportunity that they'll have at a discount. So I'm happy to see those things. Mr. LaCourse, do we know, I know you've identified 3 dates in which the market won't be able to take place. My concern with that is if there are other events, like, for example, the Oktoberfest, I looked in the backup to see if they were the same weekend, which they're not. So that's a good thing, because what happens is you've got Mears parking lot closed, you've got this area closed, and something else closed, and now you have nowhere to park. So do we know of any other events that could potentially come up in the spring, which would be the same day as the Saturdays?
Not right now, but again, that's why we put that provision on there, that if they come up, that they would come back to us and ask for an alternate location to avoid that clause. So that's why we gave that avenue. Again, if one comes up, somewhere in March or something like that, we'd look at an alternate site, come back to you for approval. For instance, in the first case, it's going to be probably moved to the band shell area and stuff of Craig Park. So those if they come up and become a conflict, will come back to you to approve an alternate location. Or there's one that came up that they're just not doing that weekend for, because there is no place to go to.
I think it would be prudent if we are going to identify a secondary location for you, for that to always be the secondary location, because we know people are creatures of habit, and so I like the Craig Park idea. I think that's good. There's good parking there.
And we could do that. I was reluctant to commit Craig Park to see how many it was, but it could be the case that would be all the ones that they would ask for. I just hated to commit them to all of those, and would rather go the thing if they come back to you. I'm sure that's probably the preference of them, and as long as there's nothing conflicting with Craig. The one event where we might not be able to do is there's a big function down at the old library at the Heritage Museum and stuff, a giant function, which they couldn't coexist. So that's where that site would be out and stuff. But I think that would be the preferred location. It's not going to be that many times to impact the Craig Park area. It won't be that many occurrences.
Yeah, we just don't want to bounce it around too much,
No.
Whatever the secondary location is. And, just trying to think
But
about
I believe, especially if that goes well, the first one, that's probably the location they'll be coming back for you to ask for.
Good. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, you have anything, for me, I'm happy to give it a shot. I think all of us sometimes travel through Dunedin, and it seems like they always have the streets blocked, and they're doing some things, and it seems to benefit everybody. And I think that if we look at this positively, it can benefit everyone in the downtown area as well as the sponge stocks, if it's profitable. So we'll look to hopefully make it happen. Chair will entertain a motion, then we go to roll call.
Move approval.
Public comments. Sorry. Any public comments on this item? Seeing none, then roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson.
Yes.
Mayor Archie.
Yes. Next item we have is ordinance and resolution, ordinance 2014-13. That's been deferred, so we're going to.
Oh, yeah, we've got an addendum.
Oh, did I miss the addendum? Addendum special consent award bid number 150007-B-RS trice receptacles and park benches.
As we talked about before, from the meetings we had, we came up with the type of bench and the receptacles that the group from the docks, there was a pretty large majority approval for them. So we've gone out to the bid processes, and you have the results of the bids that we recommend approval of in ordering, and hopefully by the Thanksgiving time, when everything else is about finished or stuff, is pretty simple, the installation of the benches and the receptacles. So hopefully right around that time, with getting this bid approved today, we can add that for the touch for Christmas and finish up that phase of the project, moving on till after season when we do some of the concrete and the other work. So we recommend approval of this bid.
Any questions?
No, when exactly are the lights going in? Do you know that?
Very soon.
Okay.
They're-
And
they're-
I want to thank you for, and Mr. Function and the city for the trees on the docks. They look beautiful.
Thank you. More to come.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any public comments on this item? Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. Next, we have order, this is Resolution 15, it's been deferred, and so we go to Resolution 2014-29, supporting passage of Amendment 1 in October 4, 2014 election.
Resolution 2014-29, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, supporting the Florida Water and Land Conservation Amendment to the state constitution, encouraging support of the amendment by other organizations, and providing an effective date. It's Resolution 2014-29 by title only.
Any question anyone has?
Let me just talk a little bit how they got here. This was a request made by the Friends of the Anclote. Obviously, the normal situation, if we had the time with it, would be to have the presentation made and then bring back a resolution. Obviously, as you've all seen, the ballots are already out and people are voting as we speak. This resolution, I tried to give you from a source that said both sides, Ballotpedia, some of the pros and cons of this ordinance. Of this resolution, of this passage of this. You have several choices as a commission to doing this. Obviously, you can vote to do a resolution in favor of it. You can vote not in favor of it, or you can decide to not take action and leave it to the voters. But again, because of the time frame and that was going on, I took pretty much, this was the boilerplate that several cities have passed. I made some changes to adapt to us and put it on here for you to look at. To do some of the research we said and to see if as a commission you choose to support it, again, not support it or not take any official action and leave it to the public, and that's something that is up to this commission.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to state, first of all, my gratitude to the city manager for getting this on the agenda. I'd also like to state for the record that I think that this resolution that we're looking at in terms of the Florida Water and Land Conservation Initiative Amendment 1 is relatively similar to something that our board already approved of, our land conservation ordinance. And I think it's fantastic that the state of Florida is looking at this, and I think it is very important that our board approves of this agenda item. Thank you.
Commissioner Tarpani.
Thank you. I'm also very much in favor of this resolution. In support of this Amendment 1. As I read down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs in some of the backup of the resolution, you see where it talks about the different programs that Florida has had over the years, and it says received approximately $300 million in state funding each year. So my question to you, Mr. LaCouris, is that assuming that this Amendment 1 passes in a month from now, do you think that we could dedicate some staff time to try and reach out for some of this funding for land preservation,
Well,
much like we
obviously,
do for other grants?
Obviously, in the past couple of years, obviously, we've had some areas where that we might want to take advantage of and go, but with that money being gone, there was no avenue for us to look for that kind of land for that. And that is one thing and one of the advantages of this, that money would be available again. So there have been cases that we may want to bring to you to decide if you wanted to do that, but with no funding or with that funding not being available, obviously we didn't bring it to you. But obviously, if funding is available for this, that would be on our radar, top of the radar to get that money if we've got places available for that.
And what, for my own edification, what department would you utilize to try and reach out for some of this funding?
It would probably be a combination of departments.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Move approval for this resolution.
Second.
Did you have any comments?
No.
As we look to go to public comments, I just say that, you know, one of the things is we passed this resolution, we passed many resolutions, especially looking at the this being a referendum item. The public is the actual one that makes the decision. We just say that we would wish that they would support it, and then ultimately they're the ones still that's going to say yea or nay. So, with that, any public comments? Please come in forward, state your name, address for the record. You've been given up to 4 minutes.
Ruth Bebency, 781 Charlotte Avenue. I'd like to encourage the board to pass this resolution to lend support to passage of Amendment 1, a state amendment for land and water conservation. It was my understanding that we already have a fund. We already have a collection of monies for this fund in the form of dock stamps, a third of the dock stamps for real estate transactions already in place for this fund, but the monies were diverted in 2012. And as I'd like to say what one of my friends says, that ain't right. And obviously a group of people thought the same thing about this Land and Water Conservation Fund. For as you know, they spent a lot of time and money and effort to bring this to the ballot on November 4th as Amendment 1. So what I'd like to reiterate or talk about is there's probably 50 different reasons for, if this amendment is passed, 50 different reasons for people to ask for this grant money. And it can be as important as saving wetlands, other sensitive areas, and our drinking water. Thank you.
Good evening. It's been a while since I stood in front of you all. I'm Carl Wagenfor, 98 South Highland Avenue, and I'm delighted to be here tonight. I'm delighted with the efforts of the city manager to jump through a few hoops to enable you to send this timely message to the voters of the city of Tarpon Springs to support Amendment 1. It's awfully important for all the reasons that Ruth just mentioned, but in terms of a little bit of a history lesson, the funding source for Amendment 1 is 1/3 of the documentary tax stamps that are done every real estate transaction within the state. From 1968 to 2009, those funds were used to provide resources for programs like the Florida Forever Fund. Locally, that Florida Forever Fund resulted in the acquisition of a beautiful parcel of land with some magnificent oaks on it right at the foot of the Bayside Bridge. It's now called the Bayview Environmental Park in the city of Clearwater. That was one local use of that funding source. Unfortunately, in 2009, those funds were diverted to other purposes, and the funding for the acquisition and restoration of environmentally sensitive lands diminished by about 95%, according to the proponents of Amendment 1. These guys up in Tallahassee collected nearly 1 million signatures to get this on the ballot. This is a citizen-initiated amendment to the Constitution of the state of Florida. This has not been written by the bureaucrats up in Tallahassee. They claim to have about 9,700 volunteers out in the state promoting the passage of Amendment 1. Ruth and I are two of them, and I hope you are too. It's estimated that the passage of Amendment 1 will create about $10 billion of funds over the 20-year life of the measure to protect our environmentally sensitive land, water resources, and wildlife habitat. It's quite a legacy that we, the citizens of Florida, have the opportunity to pass on to our children, grandchildren, and theirs as well. And I appreciate the very positive comments that you all have made tonight. And again, I want to thank Mr. LaCourse for breaking protocol a little bit to make sure this got on your agenda in time to send this timely message. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Peter Lax, 514 Ashland Avenue. As Ruth and Carl said, they've given you a little background and history as to this. So first off, just to allay everybody's fears, these are not any new taxes on top of any kind of real estate transaction. So it's not like you're going to pay a dock stamp and then another 33%. This is money that had been dedicated for these programs, but was through other circumstances disappeared. But the citizens of the state of Florida realize what a valuable treasure we have here. And any of you who have been on the bayous or have walked some of the backwoods in Pinellas County know that we are losing more and more of our land to more development and more infrastructure and other things that dwindle the availability of not only preservation, conservation, but land that can be used for recreation. And kind of the question, I guess, for Mark was like, you know, what departments? I would hope it's parks, and then there would be probably some public works involved because you got infrastructure and things of that nature. But the whole thing is it's going to be a benefit to all of us in Florida, because too often people have gone to Tallahassee and not listened to the will of the people of Florida. And this is a way we in Florida can say to our great state that we value our state, our resources. And I know a lot of us think about it sometimes in terms of, you know, wildlife and trees and parks and places where we can go and meditate or relax or enjoy the beauty of nature. But a lot of this also includes monies for cleaning water and cleaning areas that need rehabilitation. And we all are quite aware of the water situation that we have in Florida, even though it's been raining quite a bit. But, you know, we've been through those situations where we need to have our wetlands cleaned so they're properly functioning. And any area that we can, in our own way, participate in this would be valuable for our residents within the city and also within the county. We have numerous areas within the county that are county parks, and this may allow them to expand their parks that they have within our areas and adjoining the city. So I can see no downfall to this because it's not new taxes, and it will go to try to preserve Florida. And we know in Tarpon we're all about preserving our uniqueness, our character, and our integrity towards how we treat the environment. Thank you.
There are no other public comments. Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson.
Yes.
Mayor Archie.
Yes. Next item that we have is miscellaneous ratification of appointment, planning and zoning director.
I'm extremely happy to be close to wrapping up the process of putting together our planning division. Our next meeting, I'll bring the principal planner, the former Rodney Chapman position. I'll bring him forward to meet you. He started yesterday and's hitting the ground running. This one is for the director, and I'm asking by the charter, I need the ratification of the commission. I'm asking to ratify Steve Koresia, who's a Planet 3 that comes from Goodyear, Arizona. I can tell you from the start of the process, this gentleman and his application caught my eye. The first reason is because where he is from Goodyear, and the reason Goodyear caught my attention was our former city manager was a finalist for the jobs in Goodyear, so obviously knowing I might be stepping in and stuff, recruiting, and took a look at their community. And it was a very interesting community back in 2000 or 2008. I looked at it. It was a community that was growing from a population from like 20,000 to 70,000. But in all the things they were doing and all the development they were doing, one of their emphasis in that community was to develop, but to keep their hometown identity, to keep the identity of the community. And they succeeded. They brought a spring training site for, I think Cleveland Indians and another team. They developed tremendously, but their entire emphasis in doing that was, again, keeping their culture, keeping their heritage, trying to keep as much of the small town atmosphere as they could with a great deal of growth. That's a very ambitious thing, but even if you look, that's why when I sent to you, I asked you to look at their website and see where they've gone. So this gentleman, with the last 10 to 12 years being there, he is involved with all type of development, all type of residential, giving him a background to come here and tackle the many different situations and hopefully smart growth, again, with recognition of keeping our the nature of our town together. So that caught my eye. Also, anytime you're looking at an out-of-town candidate, you're looking for some ties. Well, the gentleman got both his master's and bachelor's degrees, the graduate of University of Florida. So he has ties from Florida. He began his career, I believe it's Volusia County. His parents are within 5 to 7 miles living here. He's got another set of families in the Lutz there, so he has got immediate family, including his mother, father, within the radius of this town. So he's got ties to Florida. He's got local ties to the community. So we're not bringing somebody in for a stepping stone, and then I'm at this process again in 2 years, hopefully. He's got vast experience, and again, I know the type of individual you're wanting to bring here, the one that's ability to apply the technical nature of the job, but to be one who works with the people. In Goodyear, every project they do residential, they have community meetings. They really go out into the public and get that. So I think that's another ideal case of where he is used to, that's how he works, of involving the public and people in the process. So again, with all that, and obviously after the process, which we had two of the esteemed people in this area, Mike Crawford and Dave Healy on the team that rated him, he is the first choice. He will accept the job if ratified tonight and begin the process of hopefully being here sometime in November. And I think he will be the addition and the type of individual that you want to bring into that process, working with the citizens and moving forward in our smart growth. So I recommend that you ratify my appointment of Mr. Steve Crescia as the Planning and Zoning Director.
Any questions anybody might have?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Commissioner.
Mark, I know that Renee's salary in part there was contributions from the CRA. Is that how his salary will be set up as well? Where a portion comes from the general fund and then X amount of dollars comes from contribution from the CRA?
I believe we moved that out because of the thing. I believe we did move that. I'll check to make sure, but I believe.
I mean, it doesn't make a difference.
If it's still in there, it would be, but I know several positions we lessened to give more money as the CRA was getting a little less money. We moved some of those out and stuff. I believe that was one of them, but it would be the same if that's not the one I just off the top of my head. I can't remember if that is.
Thank you.
If there are no other comments, Chair will entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any public comments in this item? Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. Authorize execution of revised Tarpon Highlands 2 utility deposit and sub-meter payment agreement.
As Mr. Smith's coming forward, we are coming down the final stretch of the process with Tarpon Highlands, a process where we will, again, it was one of the issues, if you remember, it was one of the first issues in 2008. Within the 2 weeks, I began as city manager, and hopefully in February of 2015, it'll be resolved. It is on my bucket list to solve that thing before I leave the city manager job. The clerk's office noticed that there was a discrepancy that we needed to fix, an intent of what we had negotiated with them that didn't get to writing, so I have Mr. Smith talk about that and what we need to do. And again, we're looking at a target of February, I believe, 2015, where we'll be completely paid up for that issue.
Yeah, that's actually ahead of schedule. The agreement allows till May of 2015, so it's been going well. Good evening, Paul Smith, Public Services Director, and the city manager covered this, but I'll just briefly summarize. The item relates to Tarpon Highlands 2 and their separate billing for utilities. And this separate metering and billing has been accomplished, and progress continues in their payment of the outstanding balances. The reason this item is before you tonight is a matter of housekeeping. It's been determined that the agreement must include specific language waiving penalties during the payment period if that is the intention of the city. I recommend that this language be added in the spirit of resolving the issue as proposed in the included agenda backup. This otherwise does not change the agreement or the repayment timeline, and it's been approved by representatives of Tarpon Highlands 2 for signature upon your approval.
I just first say I just want to thank you, Mr. LaCouris, all of those residents that's been involved in this. We know it's been an ongoing process for a while. At one time, it seemed like there would be no solution, including the possibility of legal action and the rest. And to get to this point where we are, I think, staff and those individuals involved need to really be commended that we could move this along until hopefully a resolution in 2015. So I don't know. Any comments? The chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Any public comments on this item?
Good evening again. Carl Wagon, 498 South Highland Avenue, a resident of Tarpon Highlands 1. I wanted to just say a big thank you to Mr. LaCouris and Mr. Smith for their outstanding efforts in achieving the resolution that is near at hand. It took their efforts along with a great deal of cooperation from a representative of Tarpon Highlands 2 to get to this point. And what was really a dismal situation for about 3 years is now almost over to everyone's satisfaction, ours in Tarpon Highlands 1 and the cities. And again, just want to thank Mr. Smith and LaCouris for their efforts.
If there are no other public comments, roll call?
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson.
Yes.
Mayor Archie.
Yes. Item number 19 is discussion quasi-judicial proceedings, a letter from Mr. Goins.
The only thing I want to note, Mayor, is I don't know if there was some confusion or not, but I don't see Mr. Goins in the audience, and I think his intent was to be here to hear this. I don't know if it's the date in October got confused or he thought it was the second one or not. I did not have a chance to talk with him, so.
I'd like to defer it to.
Because,
I know I've had a conversation with you and the attorney, and one of the things that we'd like to have is just to, well, at least for him to understand from our perspective what this process entails. So if he would like to be here, I have no problem. The commission doesn't, in deferring it to another day and time that he can be available, and we can have some discussions on and maybe alleviate some of his fears, hopefully. But if not, at least be able to explain from the city's perspective what we look at in moving forward with those types of items. Any comments?
So for clarification, we're deferring this to a date certain?
To the 21st, to the next meeting.
Yeah, we can get a motion for that.
So moved?
Yes, sir.
I don't have a problem seconding that. I'm just looking for a clarification. We're doing it in out of respect to Mr. Goins for him to be here since he wrote the letter.
Yeah. Basically, that's it. Any public comments on this item?
Marty Peters, 1702 Heritage Oaks Court, and I'm also Vice Chair of the Budget Advisory Committee, and I've served with both Mr. Goen and Commissioner Banther on that Budget Advisory Committee, and both have made very positive contributions to the city from personal experience watching it and listening to them. I do take issue with some of the comments that Mr. Goen has in here, and I'd rather not leave them setting for a couple of weeks until he can get here to explain them more. The implication he makes is that Mr. Banther had made up his mind because he had checked something on a Facebook page and said like. And I think Mr. Goen misunderstands what like on Facebook means, and also what like would mean in other situations, and he also misunderstands Mr. Banther. The implication is that Mr. Banther did something wrong. Mr. Banther did not do anything wrong at all, in my opinion. He has always served with honor and integrity, both on the Budget Advisory Committee and on the Commission. The checking of like in this particular instance was in reference to something involving the gun range. That didn't necessarily mean that he liked the gun range, that he wanted to have a gun range everywhere. I personally don't like gun ranges and didn't particularly want one. But when I listened to the testimony, by the conclusion of that testimony, based on the evidence, with the clean slate I walked in with, even though I didn't particularly care for it to begin with, I would have had to have voted for it, as did Mr. Banther, based on the evidence, and that's how it works. A like on Facebook, or even in regular life, it reminds me, I saw a commercial not too long ago about a Rick Scott commercial on how Charlie Crist was a crook. And I liked the commercial. I thought the commercial was very effective politically. It was all a lie, mind you, and it's not something that I would accept as a thing that I would vote for or like, but I liked it in the sense that it was very effective politically. And there's a lot of different interpretations on how you can like something. On Facebook in particular, you can just go down the line and like a lot of things. Doesn't mean that you necessarily agree with everything on it. And I think the implication here that Mr. Banther had already made up his mind is false, based on my past experience, and I suspect Mr. Banther will say the same thing in 2 weeks, but I didn't want to let it sit there for 2 weeks with that suspicion there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make a comment. I'm looking at the backup, and Commissioner Banther, and I agree with Mr. Peters' comments regarding the integrity of Commissioner Banther. Without a doubt, I agree that Commissioner Banther has operated with complete and total integrity. I just wanted to mention that I'm looking at the backup in the binder, and Commissioner Banther is not mentioned in the letter that I'm looking at, but yet he, I guess, is mentioned in the backup that's on the website. Commissioner Banther presently has the website in front of him on his tablet. So I don't know if anyone's able to comment on that, but I'm looking at the backup now. There's 3 pages, and Commissioner Banther's name does not come up on that. I don't know, Mr. LaCourse, if you're able to comment on that.
Probably that is because, and if you look at the title, and I also told Mr. Golden, the purpose of my putting on that letter of the, as I mentioned in the backup, is to specifically deal with the quasi-judicial pleadings from that letter. So that must be, there must be a different one. Somehow the backup, and maybe it was the early posting of Tuesday that didn't catch it, and we got to this one due, because I specifically, and I told him I wasn't going to address that for many of the reasons it's been said out there, because it's very clear cut what, when I had talked to the mayor about this, and I had asked the mayor brought this up, I believe, in August. I said, we've got a lot of agenda items and budget. Can I bring this back in October to talk about? But I was specifically, and when I talked to the mayor, we wanted to specifically address the quasi-judicial proceedings and the implications of that we were, doing those wrong. And that was the only focus of that letter that I was bringing back. So that's probably the discrepancy. I had no intention to discuss, although, it might have come up. I had no intentions to bring back to you to discuss anything but that quasi-judicial.
It appears to me that the backup that is on the website has Commissioner Banther's name on it. And it's troubling to me that some people might find that to be disparaging to Commissioner Banther. So I would like to ask that that be fixed immediately.
Yes.
In the meantime, if we want to look at this item, and I already made the second, I believe, to the motion, or maybe I made the motion, I don't recall which, to look at this item in the future, I'm on board with looking at Mr. Goins' letter, but I am not on board with anything that is disparaging to Commissioner Banther's, to his name in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that, and I can tell you that when I had my conversation with the city manager and attorney, some of those thoughts that came forward about Commissioner Banther was never anything that we even considered in terms of pursuing. Only this is because it talks about a process that we continuously do, and that's the quasi-judicial process, and to have it being brought in question, and I look for it to continually be brought in question until we deal with that. Is the only reason to bring this forward. So this is nothing, and hopefully I believe that Commissioner Banther believes that we as a body, and me personally, have nothing but the highest respect for him and his integrity, and this has nothing to do with that. And hopefully when Mr. Goins, when he comes, he deals with this, or we just won't be hearing that part of it.
If I could make one additional comment, in the future, and this is just my request, if a member of the public were to make an accusation directed to any member of this board in regards to whether somebody should recuse themselves, I would like to ask that the city attorney question that person on the public record, as opposed to approaching that person and kind of having a side, whispering conversation with them. Because I feel like that gives members of the public the impression that something inappropriate is going on, when in fact it's entirely possible that nothing inappropriate is going on. But I know that anything that we do up here should be a matter of public record.
When you say question that person, which person do you mean?
Well, I suppose I mean the person that's being accused of doing something inappropriate, the person that's being asked to recuse themselves.
Okay, yeah, and to be clear, it's a difficult spot. I represent the Board of Commissioners as a whole. At that juncture, I was being asked to render advice to a single commissioner regarding one issue. That advice was ultimately made public, but the question was raised whether to continue in the debate. And I had this prepared to speak about when Mr. Goins was here. I certainly want him to be aware of it.
Can you speak up? I can't.
Yeah, absolutely. I want Mr. Goins to be aware of it. At that point, my obligation is to Commissioner Banther to determine whether he can or should continue. And to be honest with you,
if I could interrupt, this isn't about Commissioner Banther. This is just about quasi-judicial proceedings.
No, and
I don't want to make this about Commissioner Banther, because I'm not bringing his integrity into question. I'm just saying that anything that goes on, we really can't speak during a public hearing without it being a matter of public record. We can't have whispering conversations, I believe, and as our attorney, maybe you can chime in if I'm correct.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with it. As a matter of quasi-judicial process, the fact of the matter is that whether a commissioner comes in, any commissioner comes in with a preconceived notion, with the decision having been made, based on what it doesn't unless it's the most egregious and extreme circumstance, justify that commissioner's recusal. And so, as a matter of quasi-judicial process, very likely in the future, I'll say, unless you have an ethical conflict in this particular under Chapter 112, then you are obligated to vote on it and participate in the discussion.
And you would state that over the microphone as opposed to a whispering side conversation.
Well, in this particular case, I had an issue of a Facebook thing, and social media law is developing every day. It goes very quickly, and so I did some research here on the dais and reviewed, was able to find authority to suggest that even in this case, and Mr. Roberts
I'm
said...
not talking about a specific case.
I understand you're not talking about a specific case, but I'm talking about a unique circumstance relative to social media. That's why I answered the question the way I did with Mr. Banther. I wanted to understand what Mr. Banther did relative to Facebook. I was not giving him advice there. In a quasi-judicial setting, Mr. Vice Mayor, whether a commissioner comes in with a preconceived notion or a decision having been made is not relevant to the process. And in the future, I'm happy to render that advice from here.
And I don't
Thank
know,
you.
I can't even, just pardon me on me yesterday, but I did think that at some point in time when it was kept, and I might even ask, was there a conflict? And should he be able to vote? And I think that was stated at that point in time, but hopefully we don't have those type of things as we go forward. But when we deal with this, if there are some other issues that we need to bring out as far as moving ahead with it, and it's basically one, because we haven't dealt with it in a while. We've got a new planner, so I'm sure that we're gonna have more and more of those type of issues coming before us, and to know that the process that we use is an acceptable legal process, where one person might believe that it's not, and they're entitled to that, but that doesn't hold any type of legal standard. So,
I want to just
yes, sir.
Just say thank you for your kind words, Mr. Peters, and for the board. I do take that I take it very seriously when someone accuses me of, though otherwise, and I don't mind it being addressed in this manner if someone brings it up and it's put on the backup. But in those proceedings, I operate in the way I learned starting on the Heritage Board in 2008, where you are a jury and you listen to only hearing all the facts in the room. But just as far as social media goes, not to get on a whole rant down that, Mr. Attorney, if any new case law comes out or anything you would advise us do and not do, especially because that's related to the city's Facebook page, I'd of course be all ears, and I think we all would, so we make sure that we don't ever even give the hint of anything that should not be done. So.
Certainly, sir.
Thank you.
With that, I don't know whether we still have a motion on the floor.
We have a motion on the floor to defer to October 21st. We just need roll call.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to state, I'm wondering, because we have discussed this to some degree, I'm wondering if maybe we should, and I think I either made the motion or seconded the motion, I'm not sure which, but I'm wondering if maybe we have already discussed this memo enough, and maybe we don't need to discuss on the 21st. So I'd like to withdraw either my motion or my second of the motion, I'm not sure which. I'd also like to state, just for the record, I apologize to the city attorney if I appeared argumentative. I just wanted to state for the record, and he can, Mr. City Attorney, you can disagree with me if I'm wrong. I just wanted to state for the record that we can't have side conversations, whispering conversations during a meeting. That's all I was trying to say, and I apologize if I appeared argumentative.
Oh, not at all. Not at all,
Yeah,
Mr. Vice Mayor. I appreciate it.
Again, let me clarify this because it's coming back to me. Because remember, I think, because I have had conversations, with Mr. Goen and others about that, I think there was, and I'm not even sure it's him, but there was a contention about, when you go over and whatever question you asked them, that it wasn't on the record. I think that's where that contention, something, people whispering was going on, and, it should have been in the public. What were you asking him, and what was his response? And that should have been on the public record. I think that's the issue. Thinking back as you were talking, I was thinking that was the point of the issue. And I think when I talked to the person afterwards, that was contention. What was that was said there, and shouldn't have been something that everybody in the audience had seen. Now, I realize from court proceedings you needed a clarification, and you came back and put the information on the mic, but the thought is always, what else could you have said in that whisper? Sure. That's always out there and stuff. So I think that's where that came up. Remembering from what Commissioner Larson said, it brought back to me a point that was brought up to me that, about what was said. And as you know, no matter what you say and come back and say on the record, be someone who'll consider, something else went on. So I think that was the point, remembering back on that. And again, I think also, and I have had the conversation with Mr. Goen myself, but I want to hear back, I think the main emphasis that I made to him on quasi-judicials, and I wanted the city attorney to bring that out here, not only for this case that involved the gun range, but we have had others up there. One of the biggest problems with dealing with citizens and having hearings that are quasi-judicial, I think, as I stated with the gun range and stuff, the people mistake what's a permitted use from a conditional use. And I think this was one case, and I had many arguments with many people on the phone leading up to this. And I always use, going back from my police days, the pornography shops. I don't think anybody on this board or anybody around want any pornography shops in their community. I don't think it fits. Most of us think it doesn't fit anywhere. Most of it thinks it shouldn't be there, and you should be able to do that. But that's not what the law and the Constitution says. And you have to place them somewhere. So somewhere in your zoning and stuff, you have to put those areas where they go. Now, you can't sit there and place them in an area in your zoning and then have a discussion like it's conditional use that you couldn't do. Same with the gun range. They have to go somewhere. And what I think happened in this case, and we've seen other cases up there, citizens don't know why can't we testify? It's not compatible. Why is this? And well, it's already been decided what our permitted use. If you want to change that, you need to go back and change the zoning of what was permitted. And really the point that I've brought out to others in that, and wanted the attorney to bring out in these hearings, in that case and in others, you were looking at a permitted use. And some of the things you bring, they want to conduct a conditional use hearing on a permitted use issue. And again, I think that's the important, whether it has nothing to do with this letter, and if we just wipe the letter out and don't do that, I think that's the main issue that people don't understand in some of these hearings, that difference in the case.
Yeah, and, whether and I was asked if we're not going to defer this, then how the attorney really talk about quasi-judicial process and what we are charged with as we move forward. And that's, to me, is the crux of what I had a problem with as far as when we start to deal with issues, is that we have to look at certain things. There are standards that we have an opportunity to set at any point in time that we are supposed to apply across the board and not be as, concerned about, maybe we should change this standard in the middle of the process, in terms of applying the law as it states at that point in time. And a lot of the things that was said in that letter really brought our process into question. It's why I wanted the attorney to talk about the process, and why I felt, since the city manager said Mr. Goen wanted to be here, for him to hear that. But if, it doesn't matter whether he's here or not, then I would like for the attorney to really talk about what we are charged with, not what he feel like, not being an attorney, thinks that what we should do as we move forward in this process, that hopefully will keep us from having to hire more attorneys to defend things that we've done that is not proper. So if you're not going to make the motion in terms of deferring it, then I would like for him to really talk in terms of that, and then Mr. Goy can just hear the tape,
Sure. Want to do that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity, because quasi-judicial proceedings happen quite a bit, not just in Tarpon, but obviously across the state. They're critical to the operation of local government, and it is very important to this board and the city as a whole that they be conducted properly. One of the things, the primary thing that I look at when we're talking about quasi-judicial processes is the end game, if you will. What happens if this decision is challenged by an interested party, an applicant whose application was denied, someone who has a stake in the outcome of it, or even by the city itself? Of course, there are always appeal rights attendant to a quasi-judicial proceeding, and in terms of conducting them, it's critical to understand what happens at the end. When these types of decisions are reviewed, there's a three-tiered standard of review. The first question that a court asks is whether there was procedural due process. Now, procedural due process takes into account the ability to present evidence, question witnesses, cross-examine witnesses, and basically have, for the stakeholders, for their voice to be heard. As the mayor mentioned, this isn't necessarily a courtroom, and the courts have always said that you don't have to necessarily hit everything, but you have to have a fair process before a neutral board, before a neutral decision maker. The second element is whether the commission observed the essential requirements of law, and the mayor touched on this earlier, and I think that this is perhaps, why the letter was generated. It seems to me that there may be a misunderstanding out there as to what the commission's discretion is when it's reviewing a quasi-judicial application. To observe the essential requirements of law, any quasi-judicial body has to observe and comply with the limitations of the objective standards applicable. So, for example, in the gun range application, we were talking about a site plan application. You have a set of identifiable criteria within your code, and when those criteria are met, as the quasi-judicial announcement sets forth, you don't have a lot of discretion to deny the application if those are met. There are different requirements and different types of decisions. If you have a rezoning, if you have a comp plan amendment, if you have an annexation, those all come with their own attendant set of objective criteria, but they are objective. And number three is whether the decision is supported by competent substantial evidence. That one's important as well, and we talk about that quite a bit at the outset of the hearings. Competent substantial evidence is that evidence that is relevant to the issues and would persuade a reasonable person or a reasonable board sitting in your position to make the decision that it did. Again, this isn't a courtroom, and I've heard the term preponderance of the evidence tonight. Preponderance of the evidence is a evidentiary standard applicable in civil court where you may get a finding of liability on 50.1% of the evidence, for example. In a criminal setting, the evidentiary standard, as we know from watching Law and Order, is beyond a shadow of a doubt or beyond a reasonable doubt. What's typically regarded as a 99% standard, this person did this or they didn't do it. The competent substantial evidence standard is lower, frankly. It's quite a bit lower. And what the courts have said about competent substantial evidence is this. So long as there's any evidence in the record to support the decision made by the quasi-judicial body, the decision will be sustained. So there can be, you are certainly welcome as a quasi-judicial body to measure the weight of the evidence. On the other hand, if there's any competent substantial evidence to support it, it'll be upheld on a review. A reviewing court does not get to sit as a super arbiter of what is best or right for the city of Tarpon Springs or for any other body or any other city that has those decisions in their purview. They are restrained by that standard, and that standard, if it's reviewed further, the funnel gets even more narrow, and you're really only talking about procedural due process and whether the quasi-judicial body applied the correct law. They don't even need to have applied it correctly. They just need to have used the right standard. My point in telling you all this is that you have discretion here, but that discretion is limited by the standard. And I think if there's a takeaway from tonight, what I want you to know and understand is that as we talk about in the process at the outset of these hearings, that evidentiary standard must be applied against that objective criteria in the code. In a legislative matter, as opposed to a quasi-judicial, your decision will be upheld if your decision is fairly debatable. That means that reasonable minds could disagree about the decision. It's almost an impossible standard to lose that on a review. That's why you don't see a lot of ordinances challenged, and you don't see a lot of any of the things that you did here tonight in a legislative capacity challenged. It's just not a useful and productive use of people's time. There's been some suggestion that and I don't want to say that the decision is a foregone conclusion. You have a professional staff on board that renders recommendations to you based on the information that they've received through this development process specific to land use applications. Obviously, people who work in that field, they have a special training and education that certainly I don't possess, and most people don't. They're making a recommendation to you. Are you bound to follow it? You're not. You're not. On the other hand, it's difficult in the absence of any competing evidence and in many respects competing expert testimony to determine that the objective criteria are not met if there isn't any. And the reason I say that is I want to distinguish evidence from opinions. And I'll just use the gun range as an example because that's the context in which this discussion was raised. There was certainly a lot of discussion about whether a gun range was right or prudent or a good policy decision for Tarpon Springs. What you were looking at was a site plan application that had objective criteria attached to it. And so in the absence of testimony that application did not meet the site plan criteria, you really don't have a lot to go on with respect to the competent substantial evidence piece. It's been suggested that intensive training be given relative to quasi-judicial hearings. Now I know, and I need to check with Irene, that I know that Jim Yakavone did a quasi-judicial videotape before he retired, and I believe that video is and has been distributed to the members of our quasi-judicial boards. Jim did quasi-judicial hearings for 25 years. I believe that his video is good. If you'd certainly like me to review it and make any changes to it, I'm certainly happy to do that, but I believe that he sets forth the standards that we've discussed here today, and that training is in place. Now, I don't know if that's codified by ordinance or by resolution to require those folks to do that. I think it's...
I don't believe it's either resolution or ordinance, but they do, as they're appointed to a board, they have to sign that it's part of.
Okay, so they have to sign that they've seen that. Okay. But relative to the City of Tarpon Springs processes, I think in the 10 years I've been with the firm, I've defended a handful of quasi-judicial decisions from this commission. I probably do myself 15 to 20 quasi-judicial appeals every year. Your quasi-judicial processes are good. I'm very comfortable with them from a legal process. I think some of this is driven by perhaps a sense that the land development issues are sort of prejudged and really just a rubber stamp. I don't find them to be that way at all. I think it's important that we recognize a couple of things. The first is that one of the reasons that land use decisions unfold the way they do is because, though we don't always like it, landowners and land rights have been one of the most protected rights in American history. The rights of private property owners are protected vigorously by the courts, as they should be, in my opinion, and that's why that we're required to, have a comp plan and have zoning ordinances. The city has ability to limit the use of land, but those limits are more strict than they are, say, in limiting conduct or limiting behavior and the things of that nature. So we have to make an effort, and we always have, and I think our processes are good, to make sure that we're observing those rights and respecting those rights. That's why the processes were developed the way that they are, so they do withstand challenge when those things occur. So it's something of a balance between the rights of the private property owners and the city's ability to enact and enforce zoning laws and restrictions. It's very much of a balance. That's why objective criteria are put in place. And again, under that three-tiered standard, in the year and change that I've been your city attorney, I don't believe we've gotten a challenge to any quasi-judicial proceedings. I know that I've done some for the city over the years. But I believe in all the quasi-judicial decisions that we've done in the last 12 or 13 months, they would have all been upheld on appeal. And again, I have no stake in the decision other than to defend your decision. My role in terms of the quasi-judicial process is to ensure that the three standards are met. And so, and not to, again, I don't have a stake in the ultimate decision, whether you vote yea or nay or 3-2 or 4-1 or what have you. It's really of no legal import. But my job as your attorney is to make sure that the process unfolds as it should and that the decision stands as it reflects your will, should it be challenged. I'm happy to take any questions that you have about the process. I'm happy to make any changes to it that you feel are necessary. And it's an ongoing thing. It's as case law unfolds and develops relative to land use and other quasi-judicial proceedings, obviously arise in other contexts as well. But to the extent that those processes are fluid, I'm always happy to have your input and make any changes that you think are required or necessary.
First, I just thank you for that, and I'll tell you from my perspective is that it's sort of similar to what I believe the Vice Mayor talked about in terms of when we might step into an area that we need your expertise in ruling, that you would say exactly, what your belief is in terms of what we should do, and then to run the proceedings as you believe that we should legally be doing, in spite of, whether, at times we might lean one way or the other way, or people might have their own opinion of what should happen. And I think that with that, I look to you as our legal advice and attorney to guide us through that process and to make sure that we apply whatever standards that we have fairly to anyone that comes before us. After that, there's always going to be some question as to whether we made the right decision based upon where people are on what side of any issue. If they like the decision, we're great people. If they don't like the decision, then we the bums of the week, So that just goes with the territory, and I just look for you, and I appreciate you going over that. And like I said, I just think that when people start to question the process, and I don't want to talk in terms of whether they have the background legally to question the process, then we need to be able to say why and how we base decisions. And, if we don't make the right decision, people challenge us, then it'd be you or some other legal people that we would hire that would defend us. So, I don't know if there are any, Vice Mayor.
On a slightly unrelated note, well, first of all, I want to thank the city attorney for everything he said. I think that was informative. I just wanted to reiterate my concern that I guess bothered is the word, that the backup that I have in my binder is different than the backup that our residents receive when they go to our website. I think that's a big concern that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
And if you can try to figure out how that happened, and then we just look to try to improve the process, We try to make it where people
And if
can
there are,
go.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
No, I would just say if there are ways that we can improve that process to ensure that it does match, because you're right, it's important that what we put out there is accurate to those people that's going to come before us.
And on a related note, I was just going to say, if we make changes to the backup, I think members of this board should be updated on those changes so that we know that members of the public have such and such and we have such and such, or whatever the changes may be, because if I have members of the public approaching me, telling me what they see coming on our agenda, if that's different than what I have in my binder, I need to be aware of that so I know what everybody is aware of.
And I'm not so sure it's the case. I've got to look. It may be a glitch, and as we said,
Well, Commissioner Banther showed me what's on his tablet.
Oh, no, I believe-
What's on the website is different than what's in my binder right now.
and what I'm wondering, again, with our posting on Tuesdays to try to get that week early, and when we get the final agenda, it may be something where the final agenda item we did and we didn't adjust it on Friday from what we tried to post as early as possible. That could be the case. Those are some of the glitches I told you as we try to get information out early and try to get the agenda out early. Sometimes some of these mistakes would occur. But The other thing I wanted to bring up while we were here in this type of situation, son briefly talked, but to talk with you and the state attorney about, and this incident is more to the second incident of where someone's been accused recently of being accused themselves, and it was the case of the green light issue, and I won't put any adjectives to it because that'd be disparaging to the person, but when they accused the mayor of having to step aside because he's on the planning, or whatever the absurd notion that was. I think when we have these cases of people challenging and saying things that we should not only be firm in stating them at the meeting why that's not the case, and even because there's some people out there who claim to know the law extensively and they really don't know anything, as in that case, and talking to an individual who did that, but that we not only do that at the meeting, but that we follow up and make sure we have a file of the city attorney putting that in writing for the decision. And I keep a file on it because, especially as we have these controversial issues and we have these people who think they have a lot of legal knowledge, and fortunately on the green light issue, there's a bunch of people in this county who think they have legal knowledge that when you look at the facts, they have zero, which hurts the credibility of the cause they're trying to do. But that's the case, that we not only follow up at the meeting telling them where they're wrong about somebody recusing themselves, but we'll follow it up in writing, and I'll keep a file of those so we have the backup if they come up later when they accuse a commissioner of having to step down, because over the years we've seen them and there's never been one that I've seen that's close to relevant.
Yeah, and honestly, under the statute, your ability to abstain from a vote and recuse yourself is limited to those situations where you have an ethical conflict of interest. And so primarily, and I'm happy to write that for you at city manager's direction when that issue is raised.
Well, and I go to you. Sometimes some of the things that's said is so ridiculous. Sometimes is that it's almost because I don't think you was here when the green light thing came, and I was asked whether I wanted the attorney to render opinion, and to me, it's almost idiotic to even believe that this body can elect me to go and serve on another body, and then when I come back to this body, I can't vote because I've got a conflict. I didn't even think that it deserved anything, but it seemed like it did because somebody took it and ran with it. But Commissioner Bowser?
Yes, and I think it should be pointed out, while we can't judge people's intentions, in my view, if somebody is savvy about our process, it just should be out there that when you try and disqualify somebody, oftentimes, not all the time, but the intention is to get a split vote. And a split vote is a denial. So whenever I've seen people do that with myself or with you, I could see where they were going with that, and to me that's wrong. You should just come out and say what you think. And like with you, Mayor, I mean, I was very anti-green light, still am, but I welcomed your opinion because, like you just said, we put you on a board where that's what you study and learn. So you bring back a set of knowledge, and that, by no means I think would mean that you can't vote on it. So I agree with you on that.
Anything from a right down there? Thinking about the baby?
That's right.
Well, with that, we'll adjourn this, at least our agenda, and go to any staff comments. Chief?
Yeah, real quick. As you know, we're an accredited police agency, and the state of Florida has 2 accrediting commissions, one for corrections and one for law enforcement. And they go around the state and they do accreditations and re-accreditations. And I know Commissioner Banther, Mr. Peters, I know our city manager, we went to the one a couple years ago that we got accredited. It attracts a lot of people. Well, this year, going on right now, the conference is right here in Innisbrook, and we're a host agency, so we kind of got to brag about Tarpon Springs and the sponge docks and downtown and all other aspects of the city. So hopefully you'll see some more foot traffic down there, but it was a good way to get some exposure for our city. So I just wanted to pass that on.
Thank you. The attorney.
I do have something tonight. As you know, in late 2013, the city was sued by the Tarpon Springs Shepherd Center, Inc., relative to a parcel of property at the corner of North Huey and Lime Street. That's case number 2013-10957, CI-11. You've been receiving periodic updates in my office regarding that litigation. I am at a point in that case where I desire and need your advice relative to that litigation, and so I am requesting an executive session with the Board of Commissioners and Mr. Licoris under 286.011 sub 8, and I'll have my office schedule that with you folks accordingly.
At times in the past, we have done them before commission meetings to avoid another time. If you wish to, the 21st do you think 45 minutes or?
Yeah, I understand from Mark that y'all have historically done them prior to commission meetings.
There has also been when they've been set up on a separate occasion.
Yeah,
whether it's pressing or not, so it's up to the board has decided.
It is not pressing, so if that works for prior to the next meeting beforehand, I'm certainly amenable to that.
What time?
How much time do you think you need, Mr. Attorney?
45 minutes to an hour.
We'll say
5:30
on the 21st. That works for everybody?
It's good with me.
Okay. All right.
Do we need to announce here who's going to be there, or is that at a later time?
And we'll do that at the public meeting that opens that session.
Okay.
City Manager.
No, nothing.
Madam Clerk. Mr. Banther?
No.
Vice Mayor?
No comments.
Commissioner Tarpon?
Yeah, I hate to keep you all here for an hour, but
Oh,
I
we
really
don't
gotta
have
get
no way
something
to
off my chest, so, no, I'm just kidding. No comments.
Commissioner Seaver?
I want to remind everyone about Oktoberfest coming up on the 17th, 18th, and 19th, our second annual one, so I hope you all come. And Mayor Archie will be tapping the first keg, I believe, at 6 p.m. on Friday, the 17th. So come out and enjoy Oktoberfest in historic downtown Tarpon Springs.
Hopefully I do better than I did last time. But with that, we'll adjourn this meeting at 8:30.
2 hours. So Mark will be 2 hours.